Yat eshik eh do shidina. She ya Navajo man dashijin. Ashinsle nakridina pashin. Hulichini dashiche, Tachini dash nalle. Kuta yat the my relatives, they call me Navajo man. I've introduced myself utilizing my 4 clans that we as the Ne identify ourselves as, so we may go into this world with connected relations wherever we go, wherever we turn. So how I said it was, I am of the Red Bottom clan, born for the Mexican people. A water people are my maternal grandparents. Red streak running into water are my paternal grandparents. And that's how I identify myself, as a Navajo. Also, Tene. So I wanted to make a video on behalf of myself, on behalf of my home, my people, Tene. This mountain you see behind me, in English, this mountain is called Saddle Butte. It looks like a saddle from a distance, especially when you're from behind. It has that saddle arch, the saddle horn, and that's just a little information about this. And as far as this video is going to go, I just wanted to make a little short video of where originally I come from. You know, those of you, a lot of our subscribers, they know somewhat of me, but not all of me. But I just wanted to share a little bit of where our family descendants come from. Our culture, our religion, our tradition needs to be carried on, and we need to teach our younger generation who they are and where they come from. Bloodline all the way down. Masanin hitche way back, your great grandmother. So I'm gonna take you guys back, and we do have ties to this land. I'm gonna show you guys. It's gonna be some information that's gonna be pretty sensitive, but you know, history is good to know. History is very good to learn from. So when my kids grow older, they will hear these stories, and I will teach them the way that it was long time ago, so they will not be wandering this earth clueless without knowing who they are, why they're here, you know. So there's always a reason why we are here on Mother Earth. There's always a purpose for everything we do in life. Younger generation, I just want to encourage them that it's good to know your culture, good to know your tradition, you know. It's good to know your language. Speak it. I'm still learning the Ne language. I'm still learning the Ne traditions. I'm never going to stop learning. So I encourage the younger generation, the youth, to know who you are, to know where you come from, your clan system, self-identity. That's where our grandparents, that's who our grandparents were. Those clans has been carried along with them from bloodline to where we're at to this day and age. Let's all encourage each other to learn our language, our culture, and our tradition. That being said, I'm gonna go take you guys on our area. It's gonna be some places that there's a place that I probably won't really engage, because due to out of respect, out of the Ne culture, you know, the Ne tradition, we don't go through some certain areas. But I will film areas that will, and I'll also explain them for everybody to know what is what. Okay, so with that being said, I believe 1800s. I can't really get the specific date, but back in, I know it is like around the Long Walk era, which would be 1860s. So this homestead that we are looking at, relatives, this used to be my great grandma's homestead. We as the Ne, we lived in Hogans hogans are an octagon shaped houses. The way they were built were out of logs, out of sticks like you see right here, and mud. So if you can see that the octagon started from there, you can still see the outline from there, connected around, came back this way, back around, and it always faces the east. That's east that way. And you can see one of her old coffee cans from way back then still here. We don't ever touch it. We, you know, out of respect, this is still considered a home. At one time this was a hogan right alongside a Saddle Butte. And the fireplace would always be in the center of the hogan, which it probably could have been right here. Old coffee can. We'll get a close up on that. You guys can see that. Imagine how many stories that a coffee pot could tell if it could talk. This is how far back our family ties into this land. And back then, my relatives, let me take you back in time. Now, the dark times were during the soldiers, when the settlers were coming. And long before that, the Spaniards, neighboring tribes, would raid among each other. So it kind of makes sense how where this homestead was located, up in the hills where you can't really see, but she had an advantage. Where we're standing, my relatives, you can see the whole land, so you can see people who were coming and going. So she knew somebody was coming. You know, she possibly had a strategy. Either she had a hiding place, or she would hide up the mountain. You know, back then when the dark times were coming, when the soldiers started invading the land in 1864, like around the 1860s, you know, that was during the long walk, when the soldiers were ordered by Colonel Christopher Kit Carson, who is the man that is responsible for the removal of the Neh off their land and marched them at a gunpoint to Huelte, which is a very place that would be considered the Trail of Tears. Many Navajos, thousands of Navajos took that journey and were held at gunpoint to march from their homelands, just like my grandma here, to go into Bosco Redondo, New Mexico. A Bosco Redondo reservation. It was supposed to be a reservation at the time, but it was more of a POW camp, a prisoner of war, where they rounded up hundreds and thousands of Navajos, Muscaleros, Apaches, and there's a whole lot that I'm not probably too sure of how many tribes were there, but that the government wanted to remove the Indians. Story goes, before there was homes here, if you could imagine, these homes weren't there, these telephone poles weren't there, these highways, it was just all land, and there would be soldiers coming into this valley here. The long walk of the Neh happened around 1860, and there was a general named James Carleton who arrived into New Mexico in 1861. His orders were to target the Muscalero Apaches, and we came into the picture when they came across our land, Navajos. So now his goal was to target Apaches and the Navajo people and force them to relocate them on the Bosco Redondo reservation, which would be modern day Fort Sumner, New Mexico. Now, relatives, this is just a brief history. I'm just giving you a brief history. You can look this up on the internet, or go, you know, read about it. But after all was done was said with Carleton, Kit Carson, who would be responsible as well for this brutal slaughter that they did amongst our people, he was underneath General Carleton, and he carried out the orders to remove all Navajos, and if they did not want to move, then eliminate the threat right then and there, which would mean shoot to kill. That would be a shoot to kill policy that they had at the time in 1863. I believe it was 1863. These 1860s, they started forcing Navajos, gathering them up at military outposts. I believe the nearest one here was Fort Defiance, if not, correct me wrong. The government, the army, the US Army, couldn't gather all the Navajos just because we knew the land. We knew the land so well that our people would seek shelter on the mesas, in the cliffs, in the canyons, underground, you know. So we knew the land so well that the government couldn't find all of us, and they knew there was a lot of us still out. They only could gather who they could and where they could. In 1863, the government ordered a scorched earth policy, which is a military strategy of burning or destroying crops or other resources that might be in use to, as they say, quote unquote, savages. That's what they preferred us at that time. Anything that we relied on. For example, we were very good with agriculture. We knew how to plant, you know, corn, squash, watermelon, peach trees, the sheep, the bah. Traditionally, sheep originally sheep aren't really a traditional food. That was just something that the Spaniards brought to us way back in the 1800s. But they helped us. They survived. We were good with livestock, horses, cattle. That was our resources. And then they had waters, they had wells here and there. And so that scorched earth policy, what that initiated was to eliminate all resources that were interdependence on amongst each other. The soldiers would come and they would burn all the crops. They would destroy all the crops, the peach trees, the cornfields, poisoned the water holes, you know, spilled their lead in there, and just doing things that a human being would not want to drink out of. If they see hogans or teepees up somewhere, anywhere, they go over there and they destroy it. They burn it down to the ground, and they would slaughter all the sheep, all the livestock that one would own. So they were trying to eliminate everything that the Navajos resource that depended on as a resource. So that was one of the reasons. Here you guys see one of my great grandma's home is still here to this day. It was never touched. Let's just make that clear. My relatives, also relatives, I didn't really explain that before I carry on. My great grandfather, his name was Atel. That was his Navajo name. In English, it could translate to a sharpshooter or mini arrows. You know, some that he was like really good with the gun. He was good with the long rifle. So he was a Navajo warrior who originally is from Gray Mountain. Gray Mountain, Arizona is more in that direction towards Flagstaff, towards Page. But he was sort of a chief. He had many wives. Back then, chiefs, they had like 6 wives, 8 wives, 10 wives, you name it. But at the time, my great grandfather, he had 6 wives, 6 Navajo wives. Long story short, he journeyed with his wives out this way. He was probably, I don't know, probably making his way to Gray Mountain, which is in that direction, like not too far. But you see that mountain there. That mountain there. That's called Montezuma Chair. Montezuma Chair Mountain, or Butte, whatever you want to call it. He resided there for a while with all the wives, and they settled down in a hogan. And my great grandma, she stayed there while he said, I'm going back to wheat fields, or in somewhere in that direction. I don't know where exactly, I could be wrong on that part, but he went somewhere else with the other wives, and he said that they would return. And she said, okay, I'll stay here, I'll take care of the house, I'll take care of the Hogan. And he left, and he never returned. So we don't know. To this day, there are rumors that say that he's buried like near a Montezuma chair. I don't know if that's true. As Navajos, we don't try to find graves. We don't try to, as it's a taboo. We don't try to find graves or go to grave sites without you know, unless somebody has to be buried and put away, you know, we have to gather for their remembrance in that way. But other than that, you know, we don't try to hunt them down or try to go look for dead bodies. But he's somewhere in that direction, if that's true. But yeah, that was my great grandfather. He's that's our bloodline there. Then this is where my great grandma, who lived here, and then she ended up moving back over there. So it's kind of I have to get really in depth on that if I want to really be specific, but just understand that was his name. Okay, my relatives, we came to another site where another ancestral ties with my family. It's kind of old site as well. This site here that I'm going to show you, it's called in Dene, it's called Kache, which is a sweat lodge. A sweat lodge is where one comes to for purification. It's a ceremony. Most of you might know what a sweat lodge is, but just to help you guys out, if you guys don't know what it is, a sweat lodge is a ceremonial, a purpose used to help, you know, cleanse the spirit, cleanse the mind, cleanse the body. And whether, for example, a warrior was to go to battle and he comes back with PTSD, a sweat lodge would be a good way to release those spirits that are haunting him from war, so he doesn't go to bed and wakes up, you know, with PTSD. Like Vietnam veterans from Desert Storm to World War II, you know, they utilize this. This is a warrior's a ceremony here. So it goes way back to our ancestral tides as well. This ceremony goes a long ways. Kache, sweat lodge. It goes back to the Twin Warrior days. So I'm not gonna get way too into this, but just know that that information I just shared with you. This was where it, you know, our sweat lodges aren't big like the northern tribes. How this was it used to, they would dig a hole. I'm assuming, I think it was right here. This was up when I was a little kid, but it collapsed because it has been so old. I want to say maybe 1890s, 1870s. But back then, fun fact, you see where it's located? It's like in a trend. It's kind of like in a hidden valley. You got hill all around us. The reason behind that was Navajos, we like to conduct our ceremonies kind of in the hidden parts in the hills, right? This was also built during the time after the Long Walk. This is after the Long Walk era. This was still up, and then when they came back, my family, they went to sweat, and you know, during the 1900s it continued to carry on. By correct me if I'm wrong, but there was something that happened in the country that said that Native Americans can't utilize traditional ways. They have to adapt to the Christianity way, the Catholicism, and you know, all that church stuff. And so that meant our people couldn't utilize a sweat lodge. They couldn't utilize their traditional teachings the way that they were brought up. And that was during the boarding school days, right? So they were pretty much brainwashing the Indians, brainwashing the Navajos, the Dene, They wanted them to lose this. They wanted us to lose this ways, our language as well. So how they were trying to eliminate that was, if they see anything, a sweat lodge or anything that has to do with traditional practicing, anybody or everybody that's tied with that sweat or ceremony, they go to prison. There was a law or an act that passed saying that we could utilize our tradition again. After so many years, we were beaten by the government. The government kept on. So they tried to disperse all this. So that's why my ancestors, my grandparents and them, they hid this sweat lodge here for a reason. And it's kind of sad, you know, it's kind of sad, but it's good to know the history behind our land, behind our family. This is how deep our ties into this land is. It used to be sticks and mud and just like a little flap, like, you know, they would use some like tarp or rug or deer hide or something. That would be the door, and then they would all gather, maybe like no more than 4 or 5 guys would be in there, and no women would. It wouldn't be a women guy. It would be, if guys are going to sweat, only guys can sweat. If women are going to sweat, only women can sweat. So it was that's how it was run. So I wanted to share that with you, my relatives. Hopefully you guys understand a little bit more about where I come from. And I'm gonna take you guys on another wild goose chase up and over these hills. I'm gonna show you one more before I have to leave you all. Alright, relatives, we're at another site I wanted to share with you all. This one's a little too much for me to go close to due to Navajo taboo. Like I said, you guys can see behind me, this mountain is called Chejin Nashtui, which translates to Bobcat Butte. This site here, it's another ancestral ties with our family. So I'll just show you guys right now out of respect. So if you can look closely, right there we have an unmarked grave, and little over to the left underneath that tree we have another unmarked grave. And I would go a little bit more further up, but there's a couple more up on this side around this hill, like on the other side of that hill. And I think there's a few more around behind this hill right here, this hill that you guys see. So story behind this is, you know, back in, like I said, back in the 1860s, during the Navajo Long Walk, when they were forcing Navajos to march to Fort Sumner, Bosco Redondo Reservation, a lot of our ancestors didn't want to go on that hike, didn't want to go on that march. They would rather either hide or fight the soldiers. And so the ones that died here on this land before the march happened, or during the march, I don't know when this happened, they were buried here on our land. Unmarked because the soldiers were looking for Navajos pretty much anywhere and everywhere. So when one was to pass away, they would tuck our ancestors away quietly and secretly. And around that time, during the Long Walk, there were settlers, trading posts were paying settlers or soldiers money for a Native American scalp or Indian bones. If you dig up a grave, an Indian grave, and you take the bones and you sell it at a trading post, you get money. They were called grave robbers, right? Grave diggers. And so they're out here hunting for Indians who died, and they would re-dig up their graves and try to resell their bones, try to sell their bones to local trading posts. Never discovered this area, so this is another history that we have to know, that we have to learn. Our family goes a long ways. Our family goes deep in these ties of this land, and just not this land, but our culture in general, our tradition. We got to carry it on, my relatives. I just wanted to share all this with you guys. I know it's kind of a different footage that I'm bringing to you guys, but I thought this would be interesting to share. I will teach my boys the history of our people on the Diné side. Goes a long ways. I could get into depth, but I'm gonna save those for my kids. I'm gonna save those for my family. But I'm just sharing you guys with a brief history of my family, of my place here. Thank you for all hearing me out. With that being said, I'm Navajo Man on Navajo Man and Lakota Bay's YouTube channel. Like and subscribe and follow us on social media. Hagonet.